Thank you for tuning in to Andronetalks Radio, gathering as one in our sovereign truth from a galactic perspective, exploring our world with new ideas, knowledge, and a promise of a better future. Galactic discussions for galactic-minded people. Andronetalks.
I'm going to bring up before you go there is, remember Andronicus talked about how they were back in time in Andromeda, and then they were projecting. In the first conversation I had with him, they were projecting into our present time. But anyhow, I'd like to just answer your question. Do you remember that in the beginning of the book, where he said that he was communicating with us through time and space, but they were very far back in history?
I 100% do. He said it was even before Tiamat, like basically. By the time he actually got to our solar system, Earth wasn't even there yet.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they all, remember the reptilians came into our reality through a portal. Because remember, they took me back into time as Sumer.
Yes, I do remember that.
Then I was followed back up when they returned me. It created this weird cycle.
So, one of the things that you said in the book was when Zephron got destroyed, there was a portal, a forbidden type portal, that was left there, I think, as bait by the Vegas. I think it was the Vegas. And the Lucido said they knew better not to use that portal, so they didn't. Mm-hmm. But the Draca or the Vincala did not, and they did go through that portal. And it trapped them in like a time loop. Is that time loop still going on, and does it tether them to Earth? Like to our, what's the word? Entanglement with us.
I think that they had already planned on coming into our space. They were already doing that. And that's how I was captured. So, but Gupta was the one that created that. The regular Vegas would not have done anything like that because they didn't play those type of games. But Gupta, remember, he defaulted. He kind of strayed and also actually turned on the whole system. And so he was manipulating things. And the Lucido, you're right, they knew better.
Strayed?
He turned on the Vegas.
Oh.
Yeah, he
okay.
went MIA. He was missing in action for a long time.
Is this after Andronicus had his big vision and then Gupta disappeared and he wasn't able to reach him and he was all sad?
Yeah. Well, that's when Andronicus realized that he thought that this was just a learning process, and then he realized that this was something more. This was, definitely a lot more going on.
Right.
And he started to become suspicious about Gupta because it's like he kept on directing him in the wrong way. And so he's like, well,
really?
Yeah.
So here I'm thinking the whole time that like Gupta has his best interest in mind.
He was very good. Yeah, very good.
That's not true, you're saying?
No.
Oh my goodness.
No.
I feel so fooled.
I was too. I mean, you're thinking we all started to get very involved with Gupta. We all started to really feel that we liked him a lot, and it's just that he didn't like the system anymore. Maybe he didn't like the idea that the Andromedans were having the opportunity to learn more of what the Vegas already knew. And there's always that level of competitiveness. There was a few different things going on, but also he just went rogue. He literally wanted to take off and do his own thing. Maybe he didn't want to take that role anymore of being the one that has to work with others, and he just, didn't want to be his own boss. I mean, there's an array of issues there.
Do we know what happened to him?
He's been in our reality a lot, has manipulated things.
Oh, okay. So he's still around.
Sort of, yeah. Sometimes I catch him.
Oh, really?
Still, yeah.
So you still have dealings with Gupta?
I do, because there was an entanglement between us. Because
right.
we can look at it this way: the universe, even though people think karma is garbage, but the universe had him. He said to get rid of me, that I didn't belong there in that reality after they already brought me in. And now, I'm still able to see him. It's an entanglement that occurred.
Oh, he probably doesn't like that.
No. No, because I can find him. Yeah.
And I can just see other people, other beings coming up to you and being like, hey, where's Gupta? I could see them doing that to you a lot, using you as like a interdimensional GPS.
Some of them have. They watch what I'm doing, and then or watch, who I'm talking to or what I'm seeing in the astral. And they have.
While we're on the topic of the Vegas, could you tell me, so let me understand this correctly. Let me see if I understand it right. Shiva, he's a Vega, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Shiva is involved in the creation of Earth and humanity. We have at least some of his, I guess, DNA or blood in our genetic code.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodan said, my father is Shiva plus another species, and that's how the Titans were made. Did they ever give you any clue on who these other species were that would interact with the Vegas to make all these different Titans?
Shiva's had many wives.
Okay.
And I've seen him. I suppose that if you would think, and I don't know how people would take this, but I've seen him in like a little pool with lots of beautiful women around him.
Yeah, it wasn't really a secret that, he enjoys ladies. At least
Right.
I didn't think it was. I mean, so does Andronicus.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people want to see him as female, and I think that it's there's an aspect of him that has I don't know if he had merged with a female and created that scenario, but for the most part he's a lover, and in some ways would be perceived differently if we saw him, if we didn't know who he was.
Right.
Very much. I mean, that's the premise of everything with the Andronicus transmissions, is that these beings we act like them.
Very much so, yeah. It's crazy to me, at least to me, I always would think like these Galactics would be just like emotional and spiritual rocks, but they're not. They have crazy ups and downs like we do.
Mm-hmm.
And they experience all that. That kind of blows my mind, especially the part when Rodan was like, oh, it was my own insecurities that got imbued into the subconscious of Earth, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm like, oh, really? That's crazy.
Why do you think that?
He said that.
I know. But why do you think it's crazy?
Because you have the insecurities of just him, and then it bleeds over onto billions of people. Holy crap, that's some seriously powerful auric influence. Like, I can't even imagine, like, you know, one source influencing just billions and billions of people. It's crazy to me.
It is, yeah, when you look at it that way. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't know if you had any of these type of things said to you when you were a child, but when it would rain or lightning and thunder, and people would say, "Oh, it's God bowling," don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Or God's crying.
I've heard that, yeah.
And so it's that sort of thing where you start to, have this impression, this whole feeling. The earth feels like it has emotions. Mm-hmm. There's times where, a storm comes in or a beautiful day comes in, and it influences us tremendously. And it's the same kind of thing. They have like a presence of influence. And, like you look at the Greek myths and some of these older, and they're angry, and then suddenly there's this big storm that happens.
Or like, I think it was Matthew, the other aspect of Andronicus, that was being all
Andrew?
mopey. Oh, Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah, sorry. He's being mopey in the Dark Ages, kind of bringing all that death around with him. That's like another. It's like, wow, these guys, their emotions have some serious consequences. Very serious.
Yeah. They know when they become aware of it, they pull away. The difficulty is if you have one of these ancient beings and they have amnesia, kind of like Andronicus chose to forget who he was so he could start over.
Yeah.
And so he got into more problems.
He sure did. On Zephyron, there was a group there called the Juntra, and they were described as being blue. Are they from Vega, and do they look like alien or avians?
They are bluish. They look more like some of the ancient drawings of India, where you see that they have blue skin and black hair. They look humanoid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was curious about that. Another thing is when he was there, Andronicus was there, he talked about time bending. And he talked about, you just imagine putting more time into your space than the space around you, so it appears you're moving faster because you have more time put into your space. And this immediately, I'm like, Kruger runner.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's the origin of how these Kruger runners do this? Is this skill that the Vegas developed and taught people? Is that where this all comes from?
Someone sent a short audio tape of this Native American guy talking about how he had a grandfather that could travel a very far distance, but he had a sacred song from his ancestors that allowed him to move faster than normal on his horse. He was like a Pony Express type of guy, and then he would, be back for dinner every day.
Wow.
We forgot a lot about what we were able to do. We would be in a really amazing space right now if we were not interfered with. And not so much the technology, but our deeper connection to the earth, and then the ability to transcend the parameters of the laws of nature. So a lot of times we're thinking about, well, that'd be really cool if we could do that. It's because we kind of know that we had that capability to do it, but we forgot how to do it. And I've even had people say, hey, I feel like I could, I know I can fly, or I know I can move things, but why is it not happening here?
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like inside I'm a superhero and I just can't tap into any of it. I'm like, what is wrong? I honestly feel like there's something wrong with me. Like, I sit down and I do my meditation and I get all these energetic feelings coming in and I'm like, why can't I turn this into something useful? It's very frustrating.
But you
So
are.
What do you mean?
But you are. Because you're not seeing the impact. If they had a different type of camera, and you can see actually the energy that you're emitting from your body when you're doing certain things, and the impact of what it does to those things around it, then you would see how, you'd have a better idea of your own abilities. I think that we're deliberately held back from actually expressing all of our abilities.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And it's very frustrating, especially for like a starseed who has something like that in their subconscious where they're feeling like, Mita said it best. I feel like a tiny man trapped inside of a bottle. When he was complaining about, I forget who it was, that woman that was manipulating the people with the bird cage on her butt.
Oh, the woman in red? Was it the woman in red, or was it Jane?
I don't remember.
He had a problem with Jane. Yeah, but he didn't like constraint. He didn't like to be controlled. And if anyone was liberated, he was, in his own way. He found liberation. And I know he must be squirming right now, seeing how everyone's locked down in England. That's not the way he would want to see it at all.
Mm-hmm. There was a part where Andronicus is talking about all the crazy alliances that are going on Zephyron when he's in charge. And he's really quite distraught over this. And it goes deep. So he seemed to believe that the Vinkala were allied with Aldebaran. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Aldebaran was working with everyone.
Really?
And when the Andromedans said, we're going to come over to your planet, that's when they got nervous. They got very nervous when that happened. But remember, this is one faction of the Aldebaran that was there messing around on Zephyron. I mean, they're like, all right, you did all this work, you terraformed. We had the Lucido create these buildings for us. Now we're going to come in and be your celebrities. We'll be your gods.
Yeah.
How does that sound familiar?
Very familiar.
We build the cities, we build all of these different types of things, and then someone shows up and says, hey, I'm the one that's supposed to be worshipped here. And they just step in. They don't do the work.
Right. The reason it made me think so much is because it brought me immediately back to World War II. And I'm thinking, well, how did the Nazis get so much power and technology? They got it through Aldebaran, the Nordics, and through the Vinkala, or the Draco. At least that's...
Some Greys, too. And Greys as well.
Yeah, the Greys. Yeah. And so that's why I was thinking, are they all in alliance manipulating humanity, and they chose to use like the Nazi party as their target influence point to manipulate humanity?
There's ETs helping all the different races of people in different ways.
Okay.
So we do get focused on the Nazis, but
they had
remember,
such a big impact.
They had a big impact in that century, our recent century, where they were very powerful in the world wars. But there were other races that were powerful before that. And so at different times, certain groups get selected, or they decide to walk in, step into a body, and then they bring all that power with them. So it can be very complex how it works out, Other groups have their own leveraging of power, and it creates this resistance and push and pull or tug of war of power. So the Nazis, and this is, like I said, doesn't represent all the Germans, but this select group that connected to the ETs did reverse engineering, went off and started doing things in time-space. But so did a lot of the other corporations too, and some of them were linked to different countries.
Right.
And then they collaborate. So it's just like people say, well, you know, we see the United States competing with Russia or China or, you know, some other nation, but yet at the same time they're making agreements and they're communicating and working together. It's the same thing.
So do you think that there's positive and negative Nordics that are here helping and hurting us still? Because it seems like at least back then, the Nazi Party was allied with some very negative ones, did some pretty bad stuff. But then I've, you know, read other books where people are saying, oh, the Nordics have helped us build spacecrafts and get into space and did all these great things and defended us. And I'm like, okay, does that mean they're a different faction that are good, or are you being manipulated and you just don't know it?
I think that it's the perspective that you're coming from. For some people, that they've already integrated with these different groups, but they don't realize that once they're finished with them, they may just toss them away, you know, because some of these groups, regardless of how you look at it, they lack levels of consciousness. And so once they're finished with you, then who knows what will be the end result and how you will turn out. So at the time, they'll give them power, they'll give them the things that they need, they'll give them information, they'll give them technology. But we don't know what the end result will be. It's like playing with fire. You know, fire is very useful. You need it for heat, you need it for cooking. But at the end, you know, is it just gonna, you know, burn things down on you?
Right.
So it's you have to be careful. A lot of people are, you know, have different perspectives. Some people are very good at influencing others. And if they influence well enough in the wrong direction, then a lot of people get caught into it, and then before you know it, they're in trouble. And so I'm very mindful of that. I try not to bring in anything that could snare a person. And if I see something that could be somewhat alluring, remind them of what the repercussions might be if they kind of get caught into it with any specific group.
I'm 100% guilty of that. You know this. I have been deceived by groups offering me good things I thought I wanted, and it has ended very badly for me.
Yeah.
So I sympathize.
You're not the only one. I mean, so many people have got pulled into things, and I've had many people come to me and say, you know, I was listening to one of your meditations, or I was, you know, something was happening, and then they wanted to explore something, and then they get in trouble and they contact me and I'll say, you know, let's get you out of that situation. Or, you know, they were listening to someone else and that happens, because I'm not going to say, I think it can happen to anyone when they're talking about it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. There is something extremely interesting also that you wrote down, and I'm just dying to ask you about this. I have this one highlighted because it was so interesting to me. All right. So there is a part in the book where Andronicus says, there's a Sleetar in here, and he's going to join us in, you know, basically the peace pipe ceremony. His name is Moloch.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this. How the heck did Moloch go from being the defender of Andronicus, standing up to Aldebaran, being like, you gotta go, and really being like the good guy, to like child sacrifice in the fire in the Bible? Like, what? That's a 180.
Right. Remember, when a lot of these beings came to the earth, they were worshipped. And I talk about that in the history of the ACIO, the video that was done to depict where, you know, all the stumbling blocks were for humanity. And one of them was this primary reason why ETs can't really be here, because people just lose their minds. They're, you know, in awe. They see them with these abilities. They want to win the lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times people said, "Oh, you're a psychic. Can you give me the numbers?"
Really?
Yes.
Oh my
I
gosh.
said, I'm not allowed to do that. It's just not something you're supposed to be doing.
That's
And
that's really funny.
yeah. Yeah. And so, but there's this level of worship that is there. And for many of them, it really fills their ego. They're not used to being treated that way. I mean, the Slitarin they were problematic, in their own way. And they also were very demanding. It's almost like if you come in their space, you had to like sit there and listen to them tell their story, even if it took all day. And then you would get the information that you needed, and then you'd move on. But I think the Andromedans were kind of, we have to do this again. We have to sit down and talk with them. It was just their process. And so they have this a little bit of a control, not a little bit, a lot of controlling features to them. And even now, I feel like they've kind of integrated our space and have done some very bad things. But it could be also that along the way and through time and space that they needed something biologically. For example, like the royal families, that were incestuous, and then the actual blood and other issues with their health arose, so that they needed something. They needed something to enhance that, to create a balance or to make them well. Something could have happened with the Slitarin, so they needed those child sacrifices. And we're still seeing that kind of stuff today.
Yeah. Do you think it could be related to adrenochrome?
Yeah, that's what I was hinting at. Is there's something that is preserving, and we learned it from somewhere. It's definitely one of these races or species showed some of the elite humans, this is what you do.
Right.
Or this is why we look young.
Or my other thought was he could also be impersonated like so many other people have been impersonated throughout time. I mean,
I don't think he was.
Begin with that.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I think that was him.
Do you think he's still on our planet, or do you think he's moved on?
I think he's still here.
Super.
Yeah, I've seen him before as well.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What does he look like? I picture him as like a short, kind of stout lizard man with a tail that's like kind of on the ground. I don't know if that's correct, but that's kind of how
they're bipedal. They're almost like part human, part lizard looking. That's what Slitarin. They have big eyes.
Okay. Are they slanted eyes?
Yeah, kind of maybe like a heavy lid, but round.
Do they have that cat kind of pupil?
Yeah.
Does he have a short face or like a snout?
It's somewhere in the middle. Because the reptilians are very flat in their face, and also some of those snake, the Naga type of beings, humanoid Nagas. Yeah. The Slitarans have a little bit more of a snout. Yeah.
Right. It's just since you mentioned the Nagas, I'd throw out there that I think that's cool that Zamfir claimed credit for them.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I made all the most interesting stuff, like the Nagas and the satyrs. My stuff is so cool. Okay.
He liked to. Well, he also made the mermaids.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay. And he made the plant ladies with the green skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That had the magic eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Very fascinating. Andronicus is complaining about Rodan's magic. He's like, oh, at least Zamfir's is alluring. Yours just sucks.
Well, Rodan was more looking to get information. He's almost like the investigator. type of personality, and trying to manage almost like it's sort of like a government, that like a government official of some sort. Whereas Zamfir he's almost like a frontiersman of space. He just goes out and finds a planet he likes, and then redesigns it. Some of the stuff that he designed was like unbelievable. It's just like breathtaking. His imagination is really, really incredible. And I've seen like forests and some really like amazing places. And he'll just be, laying there, enjoying it, taking it in.
That sounds like, I don't know, I would love to go and see some of these things. I bet they're just, I don't even know. I think that it would probably have a healing effect to be in like a really beautiful space like that was calm and tranquil. Unlike our space, which is being constantly bombarded with signals, which is something that, he talked about in the book, like your EMF waves are constantly bombarding you and your radio signals, and they mess up your brain, and they're not good for you, and they mess up your decision making. And I was going to ask you, is there anything you would recommend to try to clear that out of the space for people that are trying to clear their head like myself? I know that's something I struggle with, just trying to have the focus to sit down and clear out my mind for like a half an hour meditation. My mind's always running, and I'm like, nope, come back. And then it runs off, and I'm like, nope, come back.
But where does it run to?
Oh,
daily worries or things that you're not supposed to, you think that, what related to planning your day, that sort of thing?
I daydream like uncontrollably. Just my thoughts just constantly wander. I have trouble focusing it down, and when I'm trying to meditate, I'm trying to just let my mind be blank so that I can receive a signal, because I want to listen. But I feel like I can't keep my mind blank long enough to just listen.
But maybe you are listening. I think people are very hard on themselves regarding meditation. I think because I'll just sit there and I'll focus in on something, not deliberately, but all of a sudden I'll start relaxing. You just literally relax your mind the way you relax your muscles. And, the information sort of just kind of comes in. It comes in bits and pieces, or even if it does go into a space where you're thinking about how you plan your day, allow your mind to go there. I think people try to rein everything in because your mind's trying to sort something out. And if your mind's telling you you're wasting your time doing this, then you're going to feel a little anxious, like you don't want to spend too much time doing it, because then you're not going to get to the do all the things that you need to do for that day. So you need to do it in a point, whether it's before you have your full day or at the end of the day where you're not worried about it. And for a lot of people, the end of the day is really nice because then they can just go on to sleep. But meanwhile, you take all your worries and cares and then release each one. Say, oh, okay, I didn't get that taken care of. Have a notepad by, just write it down. Okay, I can let that go now because I wrote it down.
I've never tried that. I will try that. That's a good tip.
Yeah, and that way, by that time, then you can just go back in, relax, inhale and exhale, and then, just when you find that you're not fighting your subconscious that's trying to, in your conscious mind, as both of them get into a little bit of a battle, you want to allow them both to express. When they express, then you're releasing, and then it continues to open up, and before you know it, you're in some place that's completely unrelated, and that's your subconscious saying, this is what you're thinking about, this is what's bothering you, or what is trying to come forward into your mind.
Do you use like toning, lodestone, shungite, any special kind of crystals whenever you meditate or you're trying to clear your mind out or to protect yourself from all these bombardments of different waves that we're getting hit with every day?
I think I don't know if I can be in the same category, because I literally wake up and I'm seeing things, and I go to bed and I'm seeing things. And it's been like this for years. So it's kind of open to me on a regular basis. But I don't ever struggle about it. It seems like it's second nature. It's like breath for me almost, to sit there and meditate.
How did you first get your message, like your first like channeling message? Like how did that happen when you remember, oh my gosh, I'm hearing someone talk to me? Do you remember that first time?
It's been going on all my life.
Oh.
Yeah, since I was really young. I remember someone talking to me, showing me things. You know, as young as in actually the daydreaming part that you mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, I was daydreaming all the time. They used to make fun of me when I was a kid. You know, it was just something that was naturally happening. It wasn't until I started writing these things down, and when Andronicus came in, it was very profound. I mean, it was very obvious, and I thought, if I shut him off, I have a feeling that I'll be making a big mistake. And so I never did. I never shut up. I still do talk to him. I don't announce everything that he's saying, because right now he's doesn't want me to. And the same with Rodan.
Okay. Space shot, right?
Space shot.
That's
Yeah.
what they called you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you said Andronicus showed up to you when you were very early. I guess I just didn't equate that with, I guess you never even really were trying to get these messages. They were just coming to you, huh?
Yeah, I have memories. I have memories of him sitting in my living room. And I didn't realize that memory was there until, you know, we started to have these long conversations, and then over I don't know how many months or a year or so, then I realized that he came to my house and I sat in his lap, and I was a little girl, and he was like very, very distraught, almost had given up with humanity, had given up on his journey. And I told him,
was this as
why
Hollow
is he?
Man?
Yeah. Yeah, and I asked him why he was so sad. And because, you know, as a child, you know, it's like, you know, why are you angry? Why are you unhappy? And you can really pick it up.
Yeah.
But the memory of interacting with him then there was like, wow, where did that come from? And that was a recall that I had that got triggered.
Whenever I'm talking to more secular people, I always tell them, you know, you can feel when someone's upset, even if you're not looking at them. You just feel that energy when they walk into a room.
Mm-hmm.
It says if you're not even looking at that person and they're not making contact with you and you can feel that energy, that means you're capable of affecting everything around you without touching it. Just think about what that means for a second. And it really makes people think.
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's a vibration of thought. And people say, oh, I don't hear anything, I don't feel anything, I don't see anything. And they're bombarded by this stuff every day. They just don't acknowledge it. They don't actually see what it is. So that's a perfect example of what's going on with people. Is they're picking things up, and you could feel the vibe. Everyone that's listening, everyone that has ever been in that experience, they know exactly what we're talking about.
Let me ask you about the galactic court systems, because Rodan made a comment about how he was now in the courts of the Orion Council,
Hmm.
and he was making energetic changes. So how is that? Can you just tell me about their court system in Orion? What does that look like? What is the Orion Council? What are they doing? Who's on there with Rodan? What are they trying to do? Like, I don't really know anything about them.
There's civilizations over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, multiple civilizations. And with each civilization, there are not just here on Earth, but in other locations, and they have to come to an agreement when they come to a point or a pinnacle of maybe something that arises that could impact the other civilizations. And so they have to, they have the perception of what's going to happen in the future if it proceeds in that direction in a specific timeline. And so they catch it early on, and then they, have a discussion of what's going on. So I know a lot of people say, well, why aren't they doing that now? Well, this is something a little bit unusual, what's happening now. I believe it has a greater purpose. But for humanity, we don't have a history of something like this happening before, but it has happened before, where, all of these different groups, civilizations, all colliding at the same time in timelines and so forth, creating this anomaly. But Andronicus actually brought me to Andromeda, not to Andromeda, a Pleiadian council.
Oh.
Multiple times, because they don't like me.
Is this the one that was charging you, that was trying you for like a crime?
Yeah, it was in this space. It was sort of like kind of like a Greek circular type of place where the seats, stadium like, where the seats go up. But it wasn't just like, you're sitting on a bench. It was actually a seat. Kind of like when you go to somewhere to see a musical, or one of these beautiful places where you have, there's a stage and so forth. There wasn't a stage. It was just, completely circular or oval shaped. And I remember sitting there next to him, and I could just feel the tension. Like, what is she doing here? Type of thing, because he brought me in. And, he was just talking to them very amicably to try to resolve something. And what's really weird is I think he wiped out my memory of what the conversation was about, because I could hear the tone of his voice and him talking, but I don't know what he said. But that happened a couple times. And then there was a battle. There was a big argument that went on while I was there, and he saw that. I just stirred them up in the council. Yeah.
Like between the council members?
Yes.
Okay.
Disagreeing about, and I didn't say a word. I just was sitting there, and Andronicus was speaking, and probably asking them something, and then it became very tense. And I think that was the last time I recall him bringing me there, and maybe he stopped going there.
So he went there to try to resolve something, and I know you're not entirely clear on why he brought you, but maybe for support, you think?
I think he was trying to just, come to a point of peace on a specific issue, and maybe a portion of them agreed with him and a portion did not. So it started to create tension between all of them, so I think he pulled me out of it.
How many people, how big was the council?
I want to say it was about 50 people.
Okay. That's a little bit bigger than I was expecting. I was thinking like Council of 5, Council of 9 kind of thing. You're like 50, that's a big one.
Yeah, it was large, yeah.
Okay. What about the Council of 5 and the Council of 9? Are they the ones that are over this part of the space, like this planet, our solar system, this arm of the galaxy?
Yeah, the Intergalactic Council has had them in, how do I say, kind of watching over humanity. So even though things get out of control, they're not completely out of control. You know, every time they try to do some kind of nuclear stuff, they usually step in. I don't know what happened in Hiroshima and why that was allowed, but from my understanding is they're kind of like a guardianship type, you know. And I've seen them when certain things come up, and I can, you know, feel the tension of what's going on, and I'll look around and I'll see them, and you know, I acknowledge that they're there, they're aware of it. They've also have brought me to those markets where they were selling different kinds of like human organs, and not necessarily slaves, but even like they were selling brains. You know, these other galactic species taking stuff from humans, and there's a market for it. And the Council 5 showed me what it looked like.
Like as food or genetic material or research?
Genetic material, research, enhancements for themselves, yeah. Didn't feel like food, but it could have been some of it. I know that I was walking through it, and I was following someone. They had someone there as a guide, and I was going up these stairs, and that's when they said, you need to leave right now, and I just, you know, left.
What does it look like when someone's trying to sell you a human brain? Does it come in a cardboard box, or is it in like a floating jar of water? This is blowing my mind.
It actually had like, this is gonna sound horrible, it had slices. Like, so if you needed like a partial brain or something, you know, a certain part of the brain that wasn't working, and then it would, they would take it and put it into someone's head, and then it would fuse, like it would like enhance or fix it.
So they would actually take sections out and then fuse it into another living being to enhance them.
It would automatically, you know, just merge together with the other brain.
Oh man.
It was wild. It was very strange.
Imagine what we could do with that technology in medicine. Holy crap.
Well, I think that's the point is, you know, I mean, it can be looked at that way, but also what about the person whose brain that was?
That's true.
It was a dangerous space. It was a very dark, kind of shady type of characters.
It sounds very black market.
It was very black market. And so these are the things that the Council of 5 have taught me a lot of the ins and outs of what's going on in the planet.
Now, the Council of 5, that's the one that Rodan replaced all the members, and he put the Lucido, I believe, over as all the places instead when he replaced them all, right? And that's the one Gary's on.
Yeah. Although I don't know if Peter would agree with me on that, but yeah, that's what Rodan said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's also the Intergalactic Council, which is a council of multiple species from the galaxy. They have all different representatives. It's not just one group. And that's the one that the Council 5 interacts with quite a bit.
How big is that one?
It's rather large. I've been there before too. I don't say anything. A lot of people say, well, I want to be a representative of the Earth. No, you really don't. You don't want to get into that. They have a lot of abilities. I joke with Peter. I mean, a joke, but I'm not really joking, because he was like, the Intergalactic Council doesn't care about us. It doesn't really matter. They're not going to do anything. We haven't seen them. They're not, helping out or whatever. I don't know how he said it. And I remember after doing a show with him, I felt overwhelmed, like really tired, and I went to lay down. And all of a sudden I could see one of them climbing through the windows. I'm like, whoa. I said, wait. I said, that I didn't say it. Peter said it. Don't get angry at me. I knew exactly, like telepathically, he was telling me, how dare you tell us what we should and shouldn't do here. And I was like, this is not my argument. I'm not getting into it. And
that would be frightening.
It was, because they don't look, this one didn't look very humanoid. I don't know. It's hard to describe what it looked like.
Oh, he wasn't like a Lucido Gray type?
No.
Oh.
That was one of the Intergalactic Council members.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Made up of all different places or people.
Yeah, and then that one was angry that we had said that. And I was like, it'd be one thing if I said something and then those were my words, then I'm going to, explain why I said it. But since I didn't say it, I don't think I should be the one that have to deal with it,
Right. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
I get what people are feeling, though. They're feeling like, oh, there's so many things wrong. I want to change it. If I'm a representative of the Earth, I could tell them, this is the problem. We have to fix it. But we don't see the full complexity of the problem. And the second part of that equation that I don't think people take into consideration is, even if you're not the one in power, even if you have the ear of someone in power, it makes you a target for manipulation. Can you withstand that manipulation? Can you stand up to it? Can you protect yourself from it? I don't think I could. Like, as much as I'd love to say, oh, I want to be the leader of the country and clean everything up, I know that I'd get manipulated, like, beyond my control. Like, that's why I don't think it'd be a good idea for me to do it. I don't know that I'd be able to protect myself from all that.
Or threatened or anything like that. Yeah, because you have a lot to answer. Remember, that just because you're a figurehead doesn't mean that you're actually in control. You have to answer to all of these others that have the power, that are behind the curtain, that a lot of people don't know. But that's just on the Earth.
Right.
Going into one of these councils, what people don't realize is you're bombarded psychically. It's happening here. So you're talking. You think you're going to talk. They've already heard what you're going to say. They're coming back at you. It's very intense. And then you're in a room with a bunch of them, and it's like, so it's not like, hey, I'm going to be very diplomatic. I'm going to say this very, structure this in such a way that I'm going to impress them. All that's wiped out. They already heard everything. They know exactly what you're thinking. They're way ahead of you. So as smart as a person may think they are, or as savvy as they think they are, persuasive, that they're ahead of exactly what you're going to say. They'll answer you, and it's like a lightning point of how quickly they get back to you. And then you already know what your place is or why that they've made those specific decisions.
Yeah.
And then you're told to leave.
That quick.
Yeah.
That would be hard. I can't even imagine that, like, just thinking a thought and then just pulling all that information out of you. Just like,
it's hard to experience it, but just think of this heavy psychic, like, awareness communication thing going on, where it's nothing audible is happening. People say, well, they all talk in symbols or whatever. It's an understanding and a communication on a level, and it can be very fast.
mm-hmm. Something else I wanted to ask you is, do you know where Zephyron was? Is it even in this galaxy?
I think it's been moved around.
Oh.
I think it's been moved around. I don't think it was that far away from Vega. I think that all of these, or I should say, not that far from Andromeda. That's that star system there, because it was within traveling distances, and they were creating these trial planets, where these little places where they could start up new civilizations and try them out. So this was one of the early experiments. I won't say experiment, it sounds like a horrible way to say things, but where they brought in all different species, or as we would say, races, and they brought them all in, and they wanted to see how they would interact. And the Andromedans had a hard time with some of them for different reasons, and vice versa. But they were trying to create a community of civilizations that were already existing.
It seems like they had limited success for a while, until Aldebaran showed up, at least.
Right.
They always put a damper on the party. Always.
There's some of them are not bad. I mean, they actually pulled me into that civilization at one point as well. So, and they're highly intelligent. It's mostly a female society. There are men there. But I try to explain to everyone, it's very similar to the movie Dune. It has that kind of, those Bene Gesserit women. With the high foreheads and the very, very psychic, very strong.
You were a high priest for them.
Yes.
A high priestess.
Yeah.
Was that as Ishtar?
No,
Okay.
It was just a whole other civilization. But what I think is funny is because I know I talked to JP about it, how in Dune there was a lady Jessica.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that was what you looked like. You had the high forehead.
It's very possible, when you are in a civilization, that's what you look like. I was with the Lyrans as well. They had me in a few different civilizations, Alpha Centaurians.
So I actually Googled this earlier today. I didn't know where Vega was. So apparently it's a star in Lyra, at least according to Google. And I thought that Lyra was known for having the cat beings, like the lion type beings. But whenever I think of the Vegas, I thought, they would look more like Shiva, like more humanoid with like a blue skin maybe.
Yeah, they're a different race or a different species. The Lyrans are different, but the Lyrans are also near the Pleiadians, and then they're different as well. And the Andromedans, there's different variations, and they all interacted.
Have you ever had interaction with the cat beings?
Yeah.
What are they like?
Yeah. Well, we talk about there's different kinds of cat beings. There's other ones that I think were manufactured or hybrids that came from experiments, maybe from our future or our past, and have abilities, and they're different than the Lyrans.
Okay.
But I did talk to someone that was a Lyran and had memories, and told me that he remembered Andronicus, because Andronicus was joined them in a council, and he talked so much about how he loved plants. And I said, yeah, that's him. And I asked about that one plant, this succulent that they would eat, and he said yes. He goes, it's very delicious.
He actually remembered eating that plant.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Man, I wish I had memories of being on Zephyron or of Andronicus. That would be so... I can't tell you how bad I want that. Oh, like when I think about these things, I'm like, oh, I want to remember that so bad. But because you said that you saw me as an Andromedan a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was fascinating because I've always wanted to learn how to garden. It's always like called to me, but I've never really done it. I'm always like, man, I wish I knew how to garden. It seems like it'd be so nice to just like talk to the plants and watch them grow. And then when you told me that, I was like, click. I was like, oh man, that had to be it, right? That's got to
Yeah.
be where it comes from in the subconscious.
Yeah, I think, well, they were, very much into terraforming, and they took something that was really didn't have a whole lot regarding plant life or living things, and they would bring everything to life. They were very, very creative, and they enjoyed life. I mean, I would see them, they would grow things, they would make a beautiful little habitat where they could be, and then they would like commune with one another. It was almost very tribal. They would.
Sounds really nice.
Yeah, it was just very simple, and I think a lot of people, look at that simplicity and compare it to our world right now, and so many people like to just get away and go into the woods or go off to the beach somewhere. It's the same thing. There's some kind of harmony that people feel, and even though there was a group of them, they didn't feel like they were out of harmony with everything. They were actually creating this beautiful space. And so it's like, why do we keep fighting that? Why don't we just go with that and create this wonderful experience here? And instead, there are so many that are not at peace with themselves, and they're angry at everyone else around them, but they don't realize the cause of their discontent is within. It's inside of them, and that's because they're not creating. Not creating just to try to say I'm better than you or anything like that, but creating because it feels right. This is something that you contribute to the planet, and that's their way of looking at it. Not like, look what wonderful thing I created. It's like, let's all share this. Let's do this together, type of thing.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you on that. I also feel very called to the water. I didn't tell you this yet, but I actually recently signed up for scuba lessons because I've always felt so drawn to the sea life that I've always wanted to be a part of it. And so I'm really excited to do this. I'm gonna swim with all the cool ocean creatures. I'm gonna get pictures. It's gonna be great.
I think that it is. It's another aspect of life here on Earth. That is, it's a whole different experience for many people, and a lot of people love the ocean. I used to live near the ocean, and I remember, falling asleep with the sound of the waves in the background is really, really a beautiful way to sleep.
You just reminded me of something when you said falling asleep to the waves. So in the book, Andronicus says, don't fall asleep watching TV. It's not good for you. It interrupts cosmic dreaming patterns, I believe is how he said it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel, or what is your advice on using like I like to sleep with meditation music playing on YouTube? Like, I don't know if I'm doing a good thing or a bad thing, because on the one hand I have like, a tablet playing like only a few feet away from me, but on the other hand, it sounds very calming to me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing a good thing or a bad thing.
I understand what you're doing, because I used to do that as well at one time. I think ideally any type of electronics shouldn't be in the bedroom when you're going to sleep. And maybe listen a bit, and then as you start getting really tired, you shut it down and then go lay down. Because there's also, as much as I love meditation music, I think also they put subliminals in there. And of course, you don't want to take in, you want to make sure none of them have subliminals that you don't want to listen to, or potentially could influence your subconscious.
That frightens me because, how do I know what inaudible sounds are influencing me over any video on the internet?
Right.
Even if the person uploaded it nice and clean, Like, how do I know what, YouTube or whatever has done with it?
Well, I think there are meditations. They'll tell you that this one's going to help you with clearing your mind, helping you to quit smoking, helping you to, be stronger. There's some kind of subliminals there. So, I mean, if you know that that's there and that's what you want, then that's something specific. There, a lot of times they will tell you, but you're right, there is something else that happens. Even like when people would make music, remember they used to talk about the backmasking, and they would.
What's that?
That's my generation. They would actually take a record, an LP, and they would run it backwards and literally hear other words in it.
I've heard some of those recordings. Yeah,
right.
I've heard a former famous president's common message in his campaigning played backwards say something very interesting. I'm not going to get into it, but I think you could figure it out. Yeah, I've heard that kind of stuff. If you play it backwards, it says this. I've never really dug into it, but it is interesting.
We don't really use LPs anymore, but it made it very interesting. And then when people started doing a lot of that, they just decided to go digital. And so nobody could really check it, or they never really thought to listen to it backwards. I don't know.
I've listened to some of your voice backwards while I was doing editing on the transmissions. And I've also listened to it going faster, trying to find certain things. Listening to you as a chipmunk is very entertaining, I would just say. I feel like it's my reward for doing this, listening to you moving fast like 2 times X mode. It's so
I'm
funny.
glad you're getting entertained throughout all this.
It's great. I love it. Okay.
You didn't hear anything strange when you listened to it backwards.
I didn't listen for more than like 10 or 15 seconds. I was just trying to find little bits and pieces. I could, though. I could make a whole backwards recording and see what it says. Maybe there's something in there.
It could be, yeah.
All right. So there is Rev 1 is mentioned many times in the book. Many times. Mm-hmm. My question, Rev 1, the pre-Adamic race, are they the ones that they call the ancient builder race who built all like the giant pyramids and uses the clear aluminum in the building sector and has like the big network set up? Is that them?
Combination. They some of them were very advanced, some of them weren't. Some of them were very barbaric, from what I could see. And I'm not just going by history. Sometimes I get a glimpse of them and see how they act, and some of them are very violent, but a lot of them are very intelligent, even though they don't have technological advancements. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of the advancements that we see, I don't think they're necessarily, I think they were ETs that came in, and came in during Rev 1 as well, and interacted with them, and a lot of this, some of the early traditions of like indigenous people still survived and retained some of the information from them. So that, because that's the uniqueness of their culture. They continue to do their storytellings and their cave drawings and some of the different things that they needed to record history on. And so they have a recollection of what was here before. We also have skeletons and so forth that they've unearthed. You can see the scale and some of the size of some of these beings are very large.
Since you brought that up, there is something that I am dying to ask you about. I actually wanted to ask Peter about it too, but let me ask you. Do you remember, I sent you a link for it. It was for the Kandahar giant. He was shot in, I think it was 2003 in Iraq. And
he had red hair?
Yeah, and he had the 6 fingers and 6 toes, and he came out of a cave in, oh wait, no, it was I think it was Afghanistan actually. I think he came out of the cave in Afghanistan, and they sent in military to take him out, and then they airlifted him out of there, and there was all these soldiers, like, there was a soldier at least giving testimony about it, and he said that whenever he would talk to the other people in the service, it was like a story that was going around that, you know, they didn't talk about publicly, but privately they did talk about it. Do you have any thoughts on maybe giants still running around today?
I see them astrally.
Oh, really?
Whatever, anything that's ever lived on the earth has a presence in the astral. You could see dinosaurs. You could see, all different types of species. Sometimes I see the weirdest things, and then I'll hear a name, and I'm like, oh, I remember reading about that in history. So, it's really interesting what has been here. You talked about the builders. There was a group that I refer to as the builders that were, I discussed even in the radio show, I think early on. They're kind of, like I said that they're dense, very, very dense. Like, you ever see some of those planets that they're small, but they're very like heavy in weight. So their bodies were kind of short, not short, but stocky. And I remember they were sort of like, had like a grayish look to them in their skin, a short neck, and sort of built. But I saw them creating things. And so they were one of the builder races. I don't know how short they were in height.
Structures? Or were they making technology or buildings or ships? Or what kind of things did you see?
All sorts of things.
Really?
All sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah. But not all, some of them were nefarious. They were like our mad scientists before we had mad scientists. They were like the early ones, But the Lucido were sort of like that too.
Right.
And they were more like thinner looking grays or orangey. Some of them look orangey looking. And they were constant. They were more like chemists. I'd see them. Things were exploding and doing different types of chemical combinations. Because all the planets, the way that the planets were, kind of developed, they have different compositions and combinations of chemicals, which makes them somewhat unique, which makes, some more appealing than others for mining, and depending on whatever that they then create from those primary elements.
Speaking of mining, have you ever heard anything else about the Quintinium that Andronicus mentioned? He said it was put in the center of our Earth and that it would have a positive impact on us. Did you see what this substance looks like? I'm picturing it as like a silver metal that's like flowing through the earth, but I mean, I don't know what it actually looks like or what it really does or how we would even identify it.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone's actually found it, but I do know that I felt like a lot of people started awakening after he talked about that. So maybe that was the point where people were starting to remember everything's alchemy. So you could add an element and then it interacts with another element, becomes something else. So does it still exist in the original form? Maybe in some parts, maybe not. But I think the effect is what,
I see what you're saying now. Like, that's what was injected into the planet, but after it interacts with everything, that's not necessarily what it is currently.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I understand. All right, I'm going to ask you, would you like to talk about some of the Kraton stuff, or do you want me to ask you some different questions, maybe about disclosure or Andronicus stuff.
No, if you want to ask about Kraton, that'd be fine.
Okay. So, all right. I gotta get ready for this. This is heavy. What he said blew my mind. One of his quotes is he said that the Arcadians and the Anunnaki injected the simians with DNA serum to make humans. And simian, well, a version of them. Simians were the wild, brutish, unbridled beasts, and they were strong, and they were being altered. That's crazy. Is this how... I'm trying to piece together how we went from that to here, is what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to turn to you for help with this, because I know it's complicated. I know it involves more than one creator. I know it involves a whole lot of genetic manipulation. I know it involves multiple rounds and different projects going on different places, and it gets complex very fast. What is your thoughts on this whole Arcadians and Anunnaki injecting the simians to alter their DNA?
This is one of the many experiments that have happened, and the Anunnaki were definitely doing a lot of experiments, but so were the Akkadians. No one really talks about the Akkadians doing things. And there was a lot, it was almost like it was an interesting time in human history during ancient Sumeria, to the point where people are still very fascinated by what they were doing there.
Is that when this was taking place?
I watched them. They literally had needles. I watched them do it.
In ancient Sumeria?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And the simians were not humans. But they're not apes either. They're a whole other species. And
were they hairy?
In part. Not as, like a monkey or anything like that.
Not a gorilla?
Like fur, not like a fur. Facial features sort of like humans, but sort of not.
Is it like a cross between like a gorilla and a Bigfoot?
No, it was more like, how can I say it? Like, what's the Monkey King? The Monkey King in the ancient times of Sanskrit. Hanuman. So Hanuman, if you get a picture of, let me see, I'll do a share screen.
Oh.
There's Hanuman.
That is not even close to what I was expecting. I am so glad you told me this.
Yep. Whether they were descendants of Hanuman, I don't know. I mean, you can see he's not that hairy.
No, he has funny looking lips.
Yeah.
Or cheeks.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this guy?
He's just, exceptionally powerful and a good warrior. And he rescues in the story of Rama and Sita, he rescues Sita because she was kidnapped by, I think, Ravana and Ravana. I don't know how some people say it differently. But anyhow, they were aware that they were getting injected. They were aware, and I saw the conflict between them and the Akkadians, and they said, "Why are you doing this to us?" And the Akkadians thought that they were superior to them.
So these are intelligent beings. They're not...
Right.
They're capable of communication.
Yeah. I watched it. I watched them. They were in line, and they knew that they were changing. And they were looking and saying, well, what are they doing? Why are you injecting us? And then they injected them. They became aggressive, violent.
So they weren't aggressive and violent at first, but this was a trait that became developed later on.
No, they became angry that they were being manipulated and experimented on.
Okay.
Sound familiar?
Very. That's very much how I feel.
Yeah.
Very much how I feel. I don't want to be in part of many of these experiments, even though I'm being forced to. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
None of us do. It's not a comfortable feeling, and the arrogance of any group that comes in to try to do something like that is, very, very infuriating.
Yes. Which kind of brings us to the next point. It is infuriating. But Kraton said something crazy here. He said that he's decided to defend humanity's right to exist, which is great. But then he says, I've decided not to punish the people that made you and reward them. I'm like, but they didn't do a good thing. Like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, the Akkadians did not make us.
So I thought it was the Akkadians and the Anunnaki that made us by combining their minds together and their resources and technology together to change the simians.
There's multiple races that were involved. And it was, there were different human groups. Humanoids, like I said, there was Rev 1. There's Rev 2, which is us now. There's another Rev. There's other different revolutions of humans, and in different parallels.
Wow. I didn't even consider that there would be multiple revolutions beyond us in different realities. That it makes sense, but it didn't even occur to me because I was so busy trying to figure out what the heck happened to us in the past.
There's when the groups that work together to bring in humanity, there wasn't a lot of problems in bringing them in. But when humans try to replicate what they did, it becomes a problem. It's almost like they don't understand genetics properly. And so they try to create a hybrid. It comes out very scary almost. Because
Absolutely.
it's not almost, but it does come out very scary. And you see some of the experiments of what they've done. And now they want to merge humans with technology. This is something that would never be done by these advanced beings that, were more benevolent in assisting and helping to create.
I think Andronicus will have something to say about that. In fact, I think he's going to have an awful lot to say if we try to go the transhumanism route.
He was very much against it. Very much.
I think if they try to push that, he would probably step in and help those of us that don't want any part of that.
Yeah. I think I know he's working behind the scenes to try to help as he can right now.
And I would just like to say thank you, Andronicus. Please get rid of all of the transhumanist movement. I don't want to see it here. Now, okay. He did also give us this great truth serum, which I'm pretty excited about.
You talking about Rodan and his truth serum?
Wait, Rodan gave us one? I thought that was Kraton. He said, yeah, that was him, that he said he was going to hand us the truth serum. You said it looked like a little perfume bottle in your hand.
Oh, yeah, yep.
And I was very pumped about that.
Because Rodan also used a type of truth serum when he was trying to get information out of Andronicus. on Saturn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's intense. That's yeah, that's more than a weekend of partying.
Right.
That's a lot.
As a matter of fact, there were stars all over the sky. Do you remember kind of like where your background is right now? He was looking up at the stars. Yep. But yeah,
Awesome.
Kraton is a very interesting. He's very different. He could be very intimidating. He was a giant type. You brought up giants earlier. He was big. His voice was deep and echoey. It wasn't meant to be scary. It's just that he was big, and he was old, but he didn't look old.
Well, after he gave us the truth serum, he said, test them. He was talking about our beloved light beings, which he's not a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
He made that very clear. And he said, test them with this truth serum, and if they're lying, send them to me, and I will take care of them. Like, I'm going to dispose of them. Like, wow, that's saying something right there. Like, send the liars to me, I'm going to deal with it. Holy crap.
Well, the reason why he's sympathetic toward us is because we were here to grow and learn, and he knows that there are different races that have more knowledge than we have. They've been around longer, and it's almost like this, I don't know, I'm your older brother, we've been here longer, and I'm just going to mess with you. I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you these stories so that you'll get in trouble, and you'll listen to what I'm saying because you think we're helping you. And so he was aware that they were doing that, and he was like, let me deal with them, type of thing.
Which I am, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for his help. We need it. But I have mixed feelings. I really do. Because on the one hand, he wants to do all this great stuff. He's talking about, taking care of people who are messing with the primordial ooze. DNA isn't for you to play with. I don't approve of you doing all this time travel and poking holes in reality. This is not okay. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But then on the other hand, he also said, Rodan is no longer able to hold me back. And he said, it was your agreement, that your choice to be my subject. And I'm like, wait, what? We're your subjects? I don't remember this agreement. Obviously, it was a long time ago. And I'm like, and why was Rodan holding you back? Why did he feel the need to do that? Like, I don't know. Is this a good thing? Is this a mixed bag?
Well, I think maybe he got very involved in what we were doing, and maybe a little bit too involved. And so there's checks and balances, and they all sort of, all right, you shouldn't be focused on that. Why don't you work on something else, type of thing. It's, they were, he was getting too engaged in what we were doing. I was communicating with him, which was bringing him in more into the conversation, where then he was further observing what we were doing and wasn't, interacting with Rodan on what he thought, how things should go, but, saw us, started, looking at us like, well, this is interesting. I'm enjoying watching this. But, it could be better if you did it this way, or I could take care of that. And, of course, he wanted to sort of be our hero in another way, which is not a bad one to have on your side.
No, definitely not. He seems scary, powerful. He scares me even more than Rodan. I mean, Rodan he's scary too, but Rodan at least seems like reasonable and approachable. And like, if I were to make a mistake and then be like, oh, sorry, he would forgive me, I'd be afraid to make a mistake in front of Kraton. I'd be afraid he'd punish me.
Yeah, and he showed up in my timeline and did some things too. So, and I was like, it's kind of weird. But yeah, he has a very intimidating way. I don't think he's trying to be intimidating, but he's, like I said, he's very strong.
How do you... Have you heard this this thing about people saying Enki was donating his DNA to make a version of us?
This was from where?
The story of Enki and Enlil. I've heard multiple
People talk about it.
yeah, in different programs, and I was wondering, like, do you have any idea who those people actually are? Like, are they Anunnaki? Are they Arcadians? Are they someone totally different? Is this story just wrong?
My feelings are that, well, the Anunnaki are a civilization that came to Earth and they started manipulating humanity, right? But prior to that, they belonged somewhere else. Now, my opinion, and I feel very, very confident in saying this, is that Enki was also Poseidon, which was also connected to Kraton.
That's what I was wondering. Do you think his genetics were used?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, so which brings us back to the influence of the Titans, then moving through different people. And if you see some of the ancient pictures, they show like a giant like being, and then humanity is much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have seen those pictures. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Andronicus said that, or I heard you talking about that he was Amenhotep, or Imhotep.
Imhotep.
Imhotep, yes. So was he actually a pharaoh?
He's moved through different expressions. Like he was in ancient Rome as well.
Oh, really? Andronicus was?
He was Titus Andronicus.
Oh. I guess I should have saw that one coming, huh?
Yeah. So he kind of steps through, but it's also he was Zeus, but then he left, and then someone else took his place. So does that mean he was moving through someone's body, or he actually had someone come in that was shapeshifted to carry on as if they were him? And that's happened multiple times. Because I tell people the experience of Andronicus is that he's constantly in motion. He's a traveler. He's a journeyman, he calls himself. So he'll go in, he'll play the role for a little while as he's interested, and then he moves on. And so then you have part of his expression, and then someone else steps in. So you'll see that character is does some interesting things, and then all of a sudden they do some really bad things, and that's it's not his nature to just do bad things. So what happens is something else comes in after him, and has been for quite some time, imitating him.
Yes. I was thinking it was Hera that was imitating him, because she always seems to be causing problems for him.
She's like the vengeful ex-wife. I don't know how to say it, but she is pretty. She's pretty mean. She's really, really mean. But she has had this like the black goo in her. She was like completely black goo.
Oh, I didn't know that. That would explain her total lack of compassion.
Yeah, she they talk about her, early on being of this black substance, and like it entered into our reality, and then she kind of probably brought that in, which created another type of contrast with her siblings or civilizations that she was involved with.
Now, the black goo, is that different than the black stone?
The black stone was particularly used for, it was a communication device. It's almost like an implant. It was an implant. They put it in the back of their neck. I remember seeing it, saying, what is that black thing sticking out of the back of their neck? It was like my eyes were drawn to it, and I was able to see, and it looked like a little piece of like coal, but it was shiny. And I found out that it was Kraton. Kraton found a planet with all of this matter on it and these stones, and he recognized that they had like a transmitting communication capability. So whatever the compounds of what this was, he then decided, because he was a captain or in charge of a regiment, and he had them all put this in the back of their necks, and then they would like communicate no matter where they were in the galaxy or the universe.
Was he captain like Primus Teos was?
Yeah, different type of captain, definitely. More military-like.
So, do you think that he's still using these stones to communicate?
Yeah. I believe one of them's in Mecca.
Right. I was thinking, are the Titans still using them to communicate as transmitters, like you described?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah.
And should we be concerned with the kind of effect that they have on the Titans? Because, I mean...
Or on humanity, you mean?
Or on humanity, yeah.
Later on, we find out, we step back in time and discover that on another dimensional space, someone had hurt Kraton, and they shattered him, and these stones were a remnant of himself. I don't know if you've heard that transmission.
I did, and that's why I was concerned about how it was affecting, us, them, because it makes people more military, aggressive, warlike, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's if that's happening to them, it's going to roll down to us.
Yeah, and it has. It has definitely had an impact on us. Now, is the black goo the same? I don't think it's the same, but I think it's the same idea. Okay.
And the black goo probably has a very different source, though.
Yeah, and we also have variations of another version of it with the nanofemto tech.
Okay. And that's... Do you want to
wrap this up here? Yeah.
Move on from the recording here.
Yeah.
Wrap this up.
Well, I will just say thank you. Thanks for asking questions, and thanks for talking about Andronicus, which I'm always happy to do.
I'm very passionate about it. I feel like there's so much here to learn that humanity... I know I've benefited a lot just from hearing the words, just from hearing the transmissions. It's really changed my perspective and really helped me out a lot, and I think it's going to help other people too.
You have been listening to Andronetalks Radio. Join us on YouTube channel Jessica Arael Morocco, and visit our website at www.readingsbyarael.com.